welcome to Roadmap to Revenue. I'm Greg Silverman, the CEO and founder of Concentric, a 25-year analytics executive, and interviewing one of my favorite people. I've known him almost 15 years for the team, and tell them where you're at and what's going on today.
Yeah, hi, Greg. Thank you so much for inviting me for your podcast. I think this is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks. If you could lean to your left a little, Gurkan, you've gone outside the camera. Now you're perfect.
All right.
You're so handsome, 55-pound weight loss. You look 10 years younger. That's part of the journey, is everyone's journey here. And tell everyone where you're working today, what your position is, and maybe just a little bit about your history, how you got to this position.
Yep, thank you. I am with Universal Parks and Resorts since 2018. So I can't believe already 3 years, actually. It's going to be 3 years in a month. So I am leading the marketing science team within the larger global marketing analytics team. So marketing science basically is relatively like a new term in the industry. So I keep hearing about it in other places, like it doesn't have a long history. What we do in general basically is measurement, obviously, marketing measurement. But at the same time, the role entails working with the business more from the test and learn perspective for outbound and inbound advertising. So helping the business to determine what their learning agenda is and how to get the answers in the most quickest way by doing design of experiments. But at the same time, audience science within the marketing science, which is essentially customer analytics, determining who's our target audience. So that's what we do in this particular team.
Yeah, so if marketing science is so new, you probably didn't start your career in marketing science. How did you start, and when did you stumble into the analytics world? Most people, there was no analytics when I started. That's how old I was. It was called strategy and research back then. So where'd you start, and how did what was your first journey into analytics, and what tools were you using in your very first time you started to describe things to people?
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Marketing science sounds a little kind of also oxymoron, which is marketing and science getting together. So I feel like a scientist from the business perspective. I think that we're a scientist. So when I first started, this is back in 2000, 1999 to 2000, after school, which, by the way, just by experience and by education, I'm in this field. I think that it was more basically a decision that I made back in the days to be in the economics as well as statistics, which is back then we didn't have applied analytics or even applied statistics, but graduated from Michigan State. So in 1999, I was part of the econ PhD program. So I didn't end up basically completing my PhD. So I wanted to, join the workforce. But along the way, I got my master's in statistics. So the topic that I specialized in was microeconomics. So which is, so now how do you define microeconomics? Probably I would say just how consumers make their decisions, so the decision-making process, so which leads itself into just collecting the data, understanding how things work.
What tools were you using back then? My first was Lotus 123. You sound like you're a little bit beyond that. Yeah. Everyone says Excel, but what were you using?
Yeah, at school we were using SAS, and also S+, which is, it's not C++, but S+, which is the commercial version of R back in the days. I love R, which I think democratized the analytic tools, especially from from the academia, their contribution. But so the school gave me a lot of just analytic mindset to think about. And my first job was with Fleet Boston Credit Card Services. So I'm not sure whether you remember that in the Boston area. I don't know whether you were in the Boston area back in.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
So I got just employed as a business analyst. So I was doing a lot of descriptive I should say descriptive and also like diagnostic analytics, analyzing the credit card portfolio risk at the individual level. So who possess like just a risk based on their credit card usage and what actions that we would take to manage that risk. So then later got into the modeling team. So I remember basically, since I didn't have the PhD, but just now part of this program, probably we did have over 60 modelers, 90% PhD, a few, including myself, like just with the master's degrees. So the role there was to like just build a lot of kind of customer acquisition type models and also like risk models like FICO score in essence. Custom for
Were you still in S plus, or were you still in S plus, or were you using Excel, or?
Financial services back then and probably still now is heavily on SaaS. So we were using, it's difficult to get out of SaaS, like just where you have the models are already built and it's already ingrained like across the enterprise.
It's stuck, yeah.
Yep. So after fleets for a couple of years, that was not enough. Being at the client side, at least at my experience, I quickly realized like I should be somewhere else to learn more. I found my way at Merkle. So Merkle is a people-based marketing agency. So I stayed there for 8 years. That opened up like a lot of projects that I did within the predictive side of analytics.
Variety of things.
On a variety of things, a lot of clients at the same time, very fast-paced environment, mostly around essentially database marketing. So like just direct marketing in essence. So building like just models to try to find lookalikes of the client customers and basically design campaigns essentially for the direct mail type, media. So after Merkle for 8 years, got to basically Axiom, that's where we met. So you and I and Concentric. So that's where I got into more kind of the prescriptive side of the analytics, because essentially I was part of this team and responsible from developing media mix measurement, marketing mix modeling. And after Axiom, so I'm going through kind of some chronologically.
No, that's good. That's good. Everyone else on the show has, so it helps.
Yeah, so I was for a short period of time at Newstar. It was back then market share partner, so they're specialized in the measurement, marketing mix modeling, using more standard approaches like linear regression. And then basically Accenture for 4 years before I joined Universal. And Accenture was totally a different animal. So I was there for 4 years, traveled a lot within US and somewhat like internationally, like just working with the clients, trying to solve business problems by using advanced analytics. And then finally, 2018, I found my way at Universal. It's a great experience because basically we create travel experiences, right? So that's a fun job compared to my days at Merkle. I define it more, hey, we're the ones to determine who's going to get like a junk mail because of the direct mail piece. So now we have a better cause.
Now you're figuring out who gets to have smiles with their family.
Exactly.
Yep. Yeah, because it is a delightful place to visit. It's just fun. It's very fun. So tell the audience a little bit of your journey through tools. You've talked a little bit about SaaS and S+, but as you've moved up, you've probably had to use things like Tableau, or what are you using today besides us? It's not a plug for us. I'm just trying to get people an arc of how your career matures, how the tools have matured. What are you liking? What are you disliking? What would you say is missing? Yeah.
Yep, sure. So I'm going to talk about concentric market tools specifically when we talk about that prescriptive side of it. But when I look at essentially that analytic stages, as you described, descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive, I think that it's a whole in itself so it's still valid, all the different essentially layers of the analytics based on the kind of the business questions that we're trying to answer. But my focus is, like in this conversation, more marketing analytics. At the descriptive side, we use a lot of descriptive analytics. And the tools that we use there is like just more from the simple kind of tools like Excel, all the way to a little bit maybe more like just sophisticated tools like Tableau. But at the same time, depending on the descriptive side, the reporting that we do, So for site analytics, we use like Adobe Analytics. For social listening, we use like Brandwatch. And so for competitive intelligence, we use various tools like Nielsen at Intel tool, as well as like YouGov, essentially brand index kind of
So you built
platform / tools.
Yeah, so you built a big stack.
So yeah, naturally, because like we get a lot of questions to answer, and therefore even just counted basically R and Python even for the descriptive side. I don't think that the tool itself basically defines the analytics. It's essentially like what tool that you're using to answer the question. And so at the diagnostic side, I would still say of all the tools that I mentioned, but more not necessarily the tool itself, but what do we do now with the descriptive, basically, information? So if it is on the dashboard, definitely it's just like a report that you want your audiences to drive the results out of. But executives, senior executives, they don't have that time. So therefore, which is more like diagnostic analytics, comes more into play to write the story, to answer the why question. It's just not the what, but the why question. We use R and Python if it is more pure kind of data science type basically project to understand the data, to run, for example, like just k-means segmentation. But if it is pure like deep dive campaign analysis, we use SQL to run queries on the database to get the pieces of information to write the story back to the audience.
And y'all have made a lot of progress with us and on your own points of view about predictive and prescriptive. You want to talk about that journey? Because so much of what happens, I think, when people come on the show is the minute their stakeholders or internal users know what has happened, they want to know what will happen. It's like the fastest thing hey, now that we know this, we want to know what's going to happen tomorrow. And y'all have gotten a lot of notoriety around succeeding in that.
Yep, I totally agree. So descriptive and diagnostic has its place, but it's all backward looking. And most of the time, essentially to answer the question, so we use predictive analytics. The tools that we use for predictive analytics, if in two places we use in major kind of terms. One, for the measurement, so we try to forecast, so what's going to happen in the future more from those most important kind of KPIs that the business pay attention to. So what's going to happen to the sales, like just a month from today, 2 months from today, so up to like just 6 months from today. And like just we use R and Python in general to build those models. But then at the other side of the predictive analytics is for audience. There the question becomes, so who's going to respond essentially when we deliver an impression in a campaign? And so how can I create more relevant messaging when I deliver that impression? So we try to determine the next best action to take by building predictive models to understand what's the best, or like just the likely offer or the message that this
going to work and drive guests to the park.
Drive people to the park. Yep. So that's the predictive side. For the prescriptive side, so now concentric kind of market comes into play. So that's we use extensively concentric market to prescribe our marketing strategy based on by measuring essentially how things worked and also simulate like what should happen in the future based on the predictive side of that measurement. But that's not the only like just the platform we use for the prescriptive analytics. We also use basically, as I mentioned, the next best action. So the next best action is telling like just what's the next likely kind of product that you should see. So it leads itself to a prescriptive kind of solution, because instead of sending you like a random kind of communication, so now I know that you have high likely to respond to this particular offer relative to the others. So I need to look at everything at once, determine this is your first choice and this is the second and the third, and then basically prescribe a solution. If I'm going to see you on the website, I'm going to start with the first offer.
First next, yeah.
next best action and then see your engagement. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to then switch to the next best action.
So you built a real end-to-end system, right, of being able to describe, understand what happens. You're not only forecasting your marketing results, you're forecasting how your marketing is going to work. You're testing the attributions, and then you're prescribing what to give to people as an offer. So you've really gone through all 4 stages. So I've got 2 more questions for you today.
Yep.
What's the next big thing? What's going to come next? And then I have the surprise question for you.
Okay, sure. I'm curious. So the first question. I think that the next best thing, like in general right now, the hot topic is the cookie deprecation. So which is the privacy, right, like measures. So the impact of it from the marketing perspective is going to be at the measurement side. If you can't measure, you can't prescribe, and you can't optimize. For me, the what's coming up is, so without the cookies, with less capability at the measurement side, more emphasis will be on the concept like always on test and learn, like a constant essentially testing what's working, what's not working at the platform level, like for each kind of campaign, what offer is working compared to the...
Yeah, and use that feedback to constantly evolve your tactics. Is that what you're saying?
Evolve the tactics. So that's at the more the tactical level, next best, or what's coming up. At the senior, more like strategic sides, the solutions like yours is like will gain significantly more importance, because basically I need to know like what we should do, especially like now in a post-COVID environment. Like your historical data doesn't mean anything now, so we can't rely on.
It's much more about probabilities and our differentiation, because we're really cookie-free attribution as our model. And I thought in 2012, 2013, this cookie problem was going to emerge almost 8 or 9 years ago, because I thought the privacy would happen much faster. It's next year, early next year, and we're seeing a lot of activity because of it, because you have to recreate a kind of an ecosystem without the data. And we've been doing that for a decade, and you've known that too. So it's a nice convergence for us to feel, hey, we got something right. It just took a lot longer than we thought. So that's a nice thing. How do you deal with cookies, and how do you learn on the fly as a means of almost generating self-data based, because the in-market result, the in-market result is going to be your feedback. You're going to have to build off that.
Yep, exactly. So that's my dream. So using always on testing and use that information essential, like in a tool, like an ABM solution, right? Like concentric market to start the simulation. So based on the test results, so that we can then forecast like what's going to happen really in the future. Yep.
So one last surprise question. So 1999, getting out of school, did I remember that correctly?
Yeah.
What would you have told yourself, and for other practitioners who might be listening in analytics, because we don't really have a home analytics folks. We're all curious people who cobble together different kinds of skill sets. What would you have told yourself 20 years ago, now knowing what you know today?
Yep. I think what I would have told myself is to like just spend maybe more time at the storytelling side as well, because the data should tell the story, and basically like just the presentation side of it. So I call myself a data scientist. So like just we're data nerds, and we look at the data, try to get the conclusions out of the data, but basically, so simplifying it and telling the stories is even more important than the activity going on there.
Yeah, you might have spent a little more time on it, but you're still a good storyteller.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And that was a great story, your journey, and thanks for sharing it. We're getting a lot of positive feedback from people just to hear what people have gone through. A lot of analytics folks have shifted, because you have to build skill sets and you have to see a lot of different things. You can't always see that in one company. And Gurkan, I always am thrilled to see you, and really want to thank you for being on the show. This is Roadmap to Revenue. I'm Greg Silverman. Thanks for tuning in. And that's today's episode. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Greg.
Cheers.